I've been interested in the sociology of medicine and health and the body and risk for a long time now. They're all areas that I've been writing about and researching for probably a couple of decades now. And when the whole obesity crisis emerged in the late 1990s, I became quite fascinated by the way that it became such a moral panic around fatness. And so I wrote the book Fat to really explore what it is about fat bodies that inspire such moral judgments, such stigmatisation, such repugnance and even disgust in people. So I start the book by talking about the Biggest Loser television show and about the way that the contestants in that television program are routinely humiliated and represented as extremely ugly, undesirable people who need to exert self-control. And I really find that kind of representation of fatness as very, a lot of moral judgment being made about fat bodies. So I try to address in the book what, the sort of historical and social and political implications, why it is that we do have that emotional response to fat bodies and what the implications are for all the policies around obesity control and public health discourses on weight control. One thing that makes it stand out is it's part of the Shortcut series, so it's a nice short little book. So I think people will find it an easy read. I tried to write it in a very accessible way. I do include quite a lot of a review of the relevant theoretical perspectives, so there's quite a lot of Foucauldian theory, for example, in the book. But I try to do that in a way that brings it to life and really is interesting to read. So I have lots of examples from empirical research about people's lives where the experience of fat embodiment, for example, is one central aspect to the book. And the way that the media represent fat bodies is again another central aspect of the book. So what I also try to do in the book, which hadn't been done before, is look at the various different sort of literatures on obesity. So you've got your traditional scientific anti-obesity discourse that's reproduced in medical and public health literature, which is the dominant discourse on fatness. Then you've got the fat activist or the feminist kind of critique of that. And so I try and review the different perspectives that have come to bear to examine the whole issues around the so-called obesity epidemic and around fat bodies. And I provide an overview of those theoretical and sort of research literatures in a way that shows what they've contributed to our understandings of fatness and obesity. Well, I think that goes back to sort of really thousands of years of negative meanings around fatness, and it all started in the Judeo-Christian belief that to exert control over your body was to demonstrate your piety and your religious fervour. So if you were able to control the edges of your body, you were, sort of more valued in the eyes of God than those who weren't able to. And we have a long history of the saints who used to self-starve to demonstrate their control over their bodies. And so I think the meanings around the fat body go back that far, because the way that we think about fat bodies is that they are undisciplined, they're uncontrolled, they're uncontained. And because we have these thousands of years of cultural meanings about what that means if we don't contain our bodies, that we are therefore morally deficient, that we aren't able to manage ourselves in appropriate ways. So even though there's not an overtly religious underpinning anymore to those meanings, we don't think of it in sort of religious ways. I think there's a very strong parallel with how religious belief used to think about control of the body, and about how medical discourses now talk about the importance of control of the body. Now it's all rationalised by, if you're fat, you're going to put a burden on the healthcare system. But the same sort of moral judgments are made about lack of containment, lack of control, greed. It's almost like the 7 deadly sins coming back into it. So it really is a fascinating case study of how we think about bodies these days and what kind of bodies are just, sort of represented as negative and positive, and all the sort of vast network of moral meanings around those bodies.